Hello, students, and welcome to this week's lesson. We're going to be talking this week about symbolism and personification. Now, I know that the textbook talks about symbolism and allegory, and we will talk about allegory later in the semester, as I think it applies more to short stories or plays or fiction, less in poetry. So poetry, though, we do see some personification, so we will talk about that. So let's go ahead and begin. We're going to start with symbols. So we think of symbols that we see in everyday life. We see like flags are often symbols or representations of something. We see religious symbols such as the cross or the fish that we might see on the back of somebody's car. These are representations of other things. And that's what a symbol does. Symbols, they're words that represent one or more images or ideas beyond the word's denotations. So we think of the denotation, what something means. A fish on the back of a car doesn't mean a fish, it represents something else. So it's this representation. And what I like about symbols is symbols can be interpreted in different ways. So they don't always have to mean the same thing. And that's one of the big differences between symbols and allegory is in allegory, when one thing represents something, it's usually that same thing throughout. Whereas symbols, we might have multiple representations being made. And some of this depends upon the reader's interpretation of how they are perceiving that symbol. So we look at some of these examples here. We have white that can symbolize innocence or purity. We have the woods. Often when we are reading a poem or short stories and somebody moves into the woods, it's a place of evil or a place for evil deeds to be carried out. We see a star that could symbolize hope. We think of that, wishing upon a star. So stars can become hope. We can look at these in different ways as well. White, while we might symbolize innocence or purity, we can look at it as symbolizing naivety as well. However, in order to understand these symbols, we need to see them in context. We need to see the other images or other connections being made surrounding that symbol for it to make sense. And this is part of why it's interpretive because we interpret those surrounding events as well, and then maybe use that symbol to help reinforce our initial interpretation. Let's look at a couple of examples here. So here we're looking at the woods, and it could represent wild, evil, or danger, as I mentioned. So we look at Dante's Inferno, which is a very long poem. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself within a dark wood where the straight way was lost. Ah, how hard a thing it is to tell what a wild and rough and stubborn wood this was, which in my thought renews the fear. So we think of first, we're looking at the symbol, we're looking at the dark wood. We're told that it's wild, rough, stubborn, and we want to maybe look at the context to see what this wood could represent in the middle of the journey of our life. So when is that? We think of midlife, so maybe we think of maybe 40s, maybe 30s to 50s, and we come across this dark wood where the straight way was lost. We think about some of the things that this could represent, such as when we're in our teens or 20s, it seems like life is straightforward. I want to maybe go to school, I want to get a job, I want to make money, I want to start a family, and things are pretty straightforward. But then when we get into our 30s to 40s or 50s, we start to maybe question what our purpose is, or what direction do we have now in our lives now that we've had a job and a family. And so this could be represented by that dark wood where the straight way was lost. Okay, so the dark wood here could represent maybe midlife or midlife crisis. Ah, how hard a thing is to tell what a wild and rough and stubborn wood this was. And we think of, okay, so if we're midlife and what a stubborn wood this was, I think of maybe the goals that we set when we're in our teens or in our 20s. For example, I was sure that I was going to end up being a cast member on Saturday Night Live. And that didn't happen. Instead, life had other paths and other avenues for me to take. And so in my mid years, it's kind of this stubborn, trying to be led by life rather than trying to fit my goals into what I'm experiencing currently. And then which in my thought renews the fear. Okay, so this could be when we're thinking about the paths that we've taken and maybe the regrets we have, and we understand, the woods maybe represent this regret or symbolize regret. However, we can also look at woods as a place for reflection, solitude, maybe renewal. We think of times that we get so entrenched in the hustle and bustle of our jobs that we just need a vacation. So we go camping, we go to the woods for that renewal, we go for that quiet, for the solitude. And so the woods can be represented in those ways as well. Let's look at these few lines. The mountain and the deep and gloomy wood, their colors and their forms, were then to me an appetite, a feeling and a love that had no need of a remoter charm, but thought supplied, nor any interest unborrowed from the eye. So in this case, the woods are maybe again that renewal or the place of re-energization that this person is getting, an appetite, a feeling, and a love. And so maybe the woods here are symbolizing that renewal, maybe an escape from the pressures of this person's job or the city life. He says that had no need of a remoter charm, so that remoteness, creates that solitude. So even though it says deep and gloomy wood, so we kind of get that idea again of danger or evil. But in this case, it is representing maybe looking more inward in towards ourselves. And while, in the first lines in the Inferno here that we see, we're seeing that internal reflection as a negative thing. But in lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey, we're seeing that inner reflection or the woods themselves that maybe represents that inner reflection, that's a positive thing here.